The legendary Google Nexus series wasn't known for being the most ultra-premium smartphones with bleeding-edge designs and all the hardware bells and whistles found in other phones. It was more about that super clean software and frequent software updates that got us to buy them. When Google introduced the Google Pixel device, the name wasn't the only thing to change. The shift in Google's strategy brought about a focus on camera quality and a significant price increase. But today's Pixel lineup from $349 to $999 USD is a far cry from the original Google Pixel. Today we want to take a look at specifically Google's Pixel pricing over the past few years. Google Pixel. At $649 US, the Google Pixel might seem like a bargain in 2021, but back in 2016 this was a fairly expensive smartphone. For context, the far prettier Galaxy S7 was $689 and the swanky Edge variant was $779, so the original Pixel was hanging with the big boys from day one. The max spec 128GB Google Pixel XL was actually $869, which was more than the ill-fated Galaxy Note 7. Despite this relatively high price tag, the Google Pixel didn't actually have that great a hardware feature set. Sure, it had the fastest processor, adequate RAM, and then impressive charging speeds, but it lacked the increasingly standard IP68 water and dust resistance rating, OIS on its rear camera, and the design was pretty polarizing to say the least. Google banked on its software being the driving factor to buy a Pixel. Its clean interface, impressive software support, and industry-leading HDR+ camera processing won over the fans. But of course this wasn't a one-hit wonder, and the software is the reason, even in 2021, to buy a Google Pixel. Google Pixel 2. The Pixel 2's entry point remained at $649 for the base model, but doubled the storage of that base model to 64GB. You'd be paying $100 on top of that for the 128GB version, but with the Pixel 2 XL, Google hiked up the price to $849 for the base model and $949 for the 128GB option. That's $80 more than the first generation equivalent. This put the Pixel 2 XL right up against the $850 Galaxy S8 Plus, which had a better display, better battery life, wireless charging in certain regions, and kept that headphone port that Google was teasing other brands about just a year before in its original Pixel ad. The Pixel 2 vastly improved on the Pixel 1. This time there was IP67 water and dust resistant, front-firing speakers, and included the Pixel Visual Core for the first time, which aided in the phone's image processing capabilities. The hardware was better for sure, but the software was still the main reason to buy a Pixel. This one got 3 years of OS updates and held its position at the top of camera quality charts thanks to that fantastic camera processing. Google Pixel 3. The Big G waited until the third iteration to bump up the pricing of its base model. The Pixel 3 went from $649 to $799. The XL model saw a price hike too, though this was by $50 instead of $150. If you wanted the 128GB 3XL, the top spec model, you'd be paying $999, yes $1,000. For a phone with 4GB of RAM and a single rear camera, that was and still is an awful lot of money. This is the year that Apple and Samsung started normalizing $1,000 smartphones, and so maybe Google had a reason, like a justification for upping its pricing here, but we don't know. The phone's quality increased, but not by enough to justify its increase in price, in my opinion. It got IP68 water and dust resistance, an added ultra-wide selfie camera, wireless charging for the first time, and a glass back. However, its design trade-offs and subpar battery life almost cancelled out these improvements. Google Pixel 3a. 2019 saw Google release the first mid-ranger in the Pixel series. The $399 Pixel 3a made some crucial compromises, such as a plastic build and a mid-range processor, but gains the valuable headphone port. Software-wise, the Pixel 3a retained Google's class-leading image processing and Pixel Experience software skin that Pixel fans have loved since the start. It brought Pixel features to the mainstream with a reasonable price tag and made for a great deal in the mid-range sector, though the $479 3a XL might have been a little expensive for a device with a Snapdragon 670. Google Pixel 4. The Pixel 4 shared the same pricing with the Pixel 3, though made some marked changes to the design. The series introduced Project Soli, Google's face recognition and radar tech. The improved design brought in new colours, a 90Hz display, an extra rear camera, and removed the notch. The Pixel 4 series lacked polish like previous Pixel devices, its Project Solly drained the battery unnecessarily, the 90Hz display, whilst incredibly calibrated, wasn't a chart topper when it came to responsiveness, and the design felt dated when many phone makers had switched to a punch hole or motorized camera mechanism layout. Google Pixel 4a. Google's second mid-range entry into the Pixel series, the Pixel 4a, came in at $50 less than the Pixel 3a and made some modernization changes. It brought an updated processor with better image processing capabilities, a new edge-to-edge OLED display with a punch hole camera, and kept the fast capacitive fingerprint reader and valued headphone port. By the time the Pixel 4a came about, it had a lot of mid-range competition. From the iPhone SE, to the OnePlus Nord, to the Galaxy A51, to the huge range of BBK and Xiaomi mid-rangers, there's a lot to choose from. Google's Pixel 4a manages to bring value to the table with its stellar software. Instead of an XL model, Google released the $499 4a 5G, which increased the size of the device, but crucially added in a faster 5G capable Snapdragon 765G processor, an ultra-wide camera on the back, and keeps the headphone port and plastic design. In fact, the Pixel 4a 5G, functionality-wise, is very similar to the next entry on this list, Google Pixel 5. At $699, the Google Pixel 5 is only marginally more expensive than the Pixel and the Pixel 2. It's way cheaper than the Pixel 3 and 4, but that price cut comes at a cost. It drops the flagship processor for the same mid-range 765G as the Pixel 4a 5G. It has a 1080p 90Hz display, which, whilst again incredibly well calibrated, isn't the most impressive spec-wise. Its camera stack is also unimpressive from a hardware perspective. You see, Google's focus on software might be at its peak with this device. The camera quality hinges on Google's incredible computational photography, and the super clean software seems to be more of a priority than the speed and performance. The Pixel 5 is a mid-ranger with some flagship features sprinkled in. The price decrease makes sense given the rumours of subpar Pixel 4a sales and the great reception of the Pixel 3a series. Google has pivoted and is now more focused on the mid-range market than producing the best of the best smartphones. Take a look at this graph. You'll see that the Google Pixel pricing increased over the first 3 years, but it never got to that $1,000 mark, at least for the base model. Instead, at its peak, Google decided to pivot and started focusing on the mid-range and upper mid-range markets. This is likely due to a potential lack of sales from its flagship tier. There's speculation about such a thing after all, but it means a more affordable entry into the Google Pixel experience. I'd personally love to see a Pixel Ultra with like 120Hz, Quad HD OLED and the best specs possible, and a really powerful camera setup with bigger sensors and more versatility across the board, maybe even a periscope camera. But for now, it seems like Google's abandoned that $1,000 smartphone and is now focusing on that mid-range. It's a shame, but there is scope for one in the future. And that about wraps up today's video, guys. If you want to check out the original, please do check out the link in the video description to the original article by Robert Triggs. There'll be a link down there, and whilst you're down there, please do let us know in the comments if you want to see an out-and-out flagship Pixel again, or if you're pretty happy with the Pixel 5, because it's not a bad device. Please do hit like and subscribe to never miss a video like this one. I've been Ryan Thomas with Android Authority, and I'll catch you later.